Closets can be one of those overlooked spaces in your place, and for good reasons. It's usually where most folks put their things. Well, in this video, I'm gonna show you how to take a bare bone closet like this and turn it into something that looks like this. The goal is to tear it apart and take it to the next level. If keeping your clutter out of sight is a struggle, then keeping the door is probably a good idea. If you ever looked at any of your closet and wish that you could make it look better, drop an I down in the comment section. Grab a cup of something, anything, sit back and let me show you how I transformed this closet. I'm gonna do the heavy lifting first. You can pick and choose what you like from this video and apply it to your situation. To take on this bathroom project, the first thing we need to do is some demo work. I was sure that I did not want to put the door back, so I began by removing things out of my way like the trim. I carefully removed the wire shelves while trying to avoid any major damage. By the time I started to give some real attention to this closet, I was almost done with the bathroom update. So right now I'm running some cables for the lights that's going to be under the cabinet and also embedded in the shelves. I'm not going to focus too much on what I'm doing here, but basically I've routed all the wires for the LEDs over to this location. I also labeled them so I can identify them later. I have the wiring for the shelf lighting in place. Next, I'll sand the drywall and see if there's other areas that needs to be touched up. And now it's on to painting. I'm gonna paint the side walls this off-white color like I did in the rest of the bathroom, and I'll paint the back wall black like I did behind the toilet area. When it comes to this closet, everything was custom built on site. I took inspiration from the partition wall that was created. I was thinking that if your eye could catch both the partition wall and the shelf at the same time, I wanted the colors to be pretty close, if not identical. I also wanted the shelves to have this fat look to it. I cut up some 2x4 parts to make up the frame of the shelves. The plan is to cover up the shelves top and bottom with a thin sheet of plywood. On a piece of scrap wood, I calculated the thickness of 2 sheets of plywood. Then I transferred that thickness to the 2x4s that would be used for the side and back of the shelves. So now I'll just make adjustments on a table saw and rip the parts. I have the shelves part cut, laid out, and ready for assembling. In total, I had 3 shelves. This one was for the bottom shelf that closed off the hamper section. For now, I'll join the parts and set this off to the side. I have 2 upper shelves and they're both created the same way. First thing I'll do is lay one of the plywood panels down. The 2x4 sitting beside the plywood is for the front of the shelf. If you recall, I trimmed off a piece of the 2x4. Those trim pieces will be utilized for the sides and the back. I'm just gonna clamp the 2x4s together using the front and the side and add the pocket hole screws. And I'll do the same thing for the opposite side. Now I'll close off the back. The next thing I want to do is to drill a pass-through hole for the wire in the frame of the shelf. I'll repeat this for the other shelf and then it's on to sanding. I went to do a test fit with the shelves, just to get a feel for them and see if I needed to make any adjustments. I realized it was a tight fit, so now I have to change my approach. I'm not pulling them back out. And while I'm at it, I'll pull the wire through the pass-through hole. I'll put a couple of screws through the back of the shelf into the wall and also on the sides. After making my cuts, I went to put the shelves in multiple times and this started to become a headache. So I pivoted and created a template that would fit exactly in this space and I'll be working from that so I'm no longer guessing. As I go up and down the inside of the closet, the measurements change. So I have to do this for the top and the bottom of each shelf. So what I have to do now is to modify the plywood to fit the templates. As I mentioned in my case, all the plywood for the shelves are not equal. I located the 2 designated panels that was dedicated for the bottom of the shelves. What I'm gonna do is find the center of the inner part of the closet and put a mark. Then I'll drill a hole for the wires to pass through. Now I'll install the frame for the bottom section of the closet. This is where the hamper is going to be, so I just wanted to close this section off. Now I'll stain the parts for the shelves. What I'll be using to light up the closet is these LED puck lights. They are rated at 2 watts 12 volt DC with a 2700K, which is a bit on the warm side. I've had these lights since 2017 from an older project, so I don't know if they're still available. If I can find them, I'll link them down below in the video description, or I'll find something comparable. I'll stretch out the wires and cut them to a reasonable length. Then I'll remove the jacket to expose the conductors. I'll pass the wire through the hole and attach the light. All of the panels are marked so I know exactly where they should go. I will splice the wires from the puck lights to the wires that I have coming out of the wall. I will explain this light circuit more in the next video. I swapped the orders around for the video, but basically what I'm doing here now is connecting the two lights that's going to be in the closet over to this switch that I added next to the outlet. Before I close up the shelves, I wanted to make sure that my connection was good and the lights were in working order. I added some supports on the side just so the plywood didn't flap. I did the same thing along the front as well. Now I use a nail gun to attach the bottom of the shelf. The spacing between the bottom shelf and the hamper is smaller than the spacing between the shelves above. Knowing that, I clamped this panel above, this way it can drop down once I install the frame below. So I went through the trouble creating this frame, painting it, and installing it. Then I realized it just wasn't working for me visually. I was not gonna be happy with this, so I went back to the drawing board and built an entirely new shelf and replaced this one. That derailed me for a bit, but now I'm back on track. I'll install the remaining trim and frame up the doorway. I ripped a 2x4 on a table saw to create the door stops. Then I counterbored a few holes, installed some screws, and secured this in place. I plugged the holes, sanded, and painted this area. Now I'm going to shift my attention to this hamper cabinet. I'm going to start this off by creating a frame that sits in the bottom of the closet. I'll need 4 parts for that, 2 sides, the back, and then there's one along the front but sits at the bottom. The frame is designed to fit snugged right into the closet. With all the parts clamped, I'll screw them together. And just a reminder, this is being designed, cut, and built on the fly. So to help my thought process, I'm gonna try to recreate the environment of the closet, but on top of this workbench. It would have been more convenient to have longer drawer slides, but these are the ones I had on hand. I placed this plywood panel on top of the drawer slide so I can determine how long I want this to be. Now I'll attach the drawer slides to the frame. I sat the plywood base inside the frame and centered it. Then I slid the inner drawer slide sides underneath and placed a reference mark on the bottom. I'll sink a few holes into these side parts. This way the screw heads doesn't interfere with anything and I can use shorter screws. Alright, so now I can move on to adding those parts to the bottom of the plywood panel. I'll use these pieces of plywood and use them as risers. This way I can elevate the base so it doesn't rub as it slides in and out. Then I'll secure the drawer slides to the base. So I have these really large brackets that I've had on hand for many years. I ultimately didn't use these in the very end just because I ran into some interference. The idea here is to mount the brackets to the base and then mount the door to the brackets. I will be making a shaker style cabinet door. I'll rip the framing to 2.5 inches in width. I cut the ends to a 4-5 miter. Before committing to the materials that I made, I'm going to take a scrap piece to make some test cuts as I adjust the table saw fence to the blade. Now I need to determine the size of the panel that's going to be inside of the frame. I lucked out because I was able to use the panel that did not work for that third shelf. I'm glad I checked because it happened to fit right inside of the frame. When I did a dry fit, the parts fit together a bit tighter than I liked. Not my preference, but I can still make this work. I put some wood glue in each of the corners, put on a ratchet strap, and check for squaring. I set the door here just to get a feel for the clearance that I want at the bottom of the door. This is the first test fit and it fits like a glove. Thankfully, no adjustment was needed. Just tap it in place, add some screws, and that's it. Eventually, I changed these brackets for smaller ones because I couldn't easily get the hamper in and out. I went on to clean up the area, paint the door stops, and install the door. And finally, I installed the drawer handle.